Hey everyone, this is Maregaal Ben Yaakov, and this is part 2 in the series of learning about the Ten Commandments. And I didn't realize that part 1, we're right in the middle of the Ten Commandments, namely the commandment that says thou shalt not steal. The video got cut off, so I didn't know that. So anyway, I was watching it on YouTube and on my phone. After I loaded it up on YouTube, that it got cut off around the middle of the sentence. So this is part 2, and so now we're dealing with the commandment that says thou shalt not steal. As we know, that's pretty point blank, pretty easy to understand. Do not take basically what doesn't belong to you. But at the same time, there's various degrees and types of theft that is done as well. And some may not be so obvious, to others. They're being robbed or ripped off. And you could say that too. It's don't rip off others. And so now there's there's blunt stealing, like you rob somebody. And like they're walking down the street and you mug them. And so then you have others where you're breaking in and entering and there's no one home, and I believe that term is robbery. And whether no one's home, there's no personal in your face violation of in confrontation of somebody, where if you were to mug them, that's face to face. And so another point of stealing is there's a commandment in Leviticus 19 that says thou shalt have just weights and balances. And so where this applies is like in the business arena, like from the gas stations to grocery stores where you measure out stuff, or like say at the modern days where you weigh in your vehicle at the landfill, and so they charge you based on your weight. And so you are supposed to have just weights and balances. So if you claim you get $2 a gallon and you don't even pay attention to the money, but you just stop at 1 gallon only, and you see it's like $2.10, you're being ripped off. So out of a huge amount of gallons they have in their tank, that's like quite a bit extra per huge tank. Not your car tank, but the tank under the ground. And so they could be ripping you off. And if it's just a fraction, you don't discern, you're not paying attention. So sometimes, just for me, I kind of see, I put it right at a gallon if I could trigger it just right, see if I'm being ripped off or not. And but then there's some that you may not even be aware of, like say the old school, or even at the grocery store where it's not like a digital scale, where they have the old weight gravity kind. They could kind of tilt the scale a little bit where you're getting less poundage for the exact same amount of money. And so all this has to be just weights and balances, and so therefore you must not, that applies under thou shalt not steal. So there's a whole variety of things, from ripping people off, mugging, and robbery. And there's another one, besides this blunt theft of stuff, like and returning things, like say for example, that would just be under blunt stealing. But if like you're in a neighborhood, where kids play, and they have like a frisbee on the ground on the sidewalk when you're going by their house and no one's around, and you steal it, you cannot bluntly say, I wonder who this belongs to, and you keep it for yourself versus just letting it lay there. If it's in someone's yard, don't go in their yard and get it. It's a different thing if it's laying right in the middle of the street and you obviously, and you don't know anybody of that neighborhood, you know, it's one thing, you know, but still, I would just toss it into the yard, and it, you know, closest to the street, something like that, because it's probably a neighbor in that vicinity. So anyway, that is the commandment dealing with thou shalt not steal. The next one is, excuse me, let me see if I got any water here. Oops, there's a little bit. It's actually coffee, but it's cold coffee. Anyway, it works when you're choking here. Anyway, the next one is thou shalt not bear false testimony against your neighbor. Now, some translations are just so crude in their translation, or when people paraphrase it in pictures, it says, thou shalt not lie. Well, the commandment has nothing to do with hardcore, like just all lying in general. This is being very precise in its wording. Thou shalt not bear false testimony against your neighbor. So what this is referring to is like going to court and things like that, and bearing literally false testimony against somebody to get them in trouble, versus just you lying or exaggerating or things like that. And those things are forbidden too, but the thing is about lying, sometimes there's a kosher lying which is allowed. I'll give you an example of kosher lying. It's like, say if we lived in 1941 and we live in Germany or Poland or somewhere where Hitler is, and they're seeking out the Jewish people, and you're not Jewish, and you're hiding Jewish people, and they knock on your door, boom, 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 boom. Hey, you got any Jewish people who know where some is? And you go, oh no, I don't know anything, never heard of any. So you're like lying through your teeth to save a life. So in that case, lying is kosher and good because life takes precedent over so-called lying, you know, and so therefore it's allowed. King David did it in these stories, Abraham did it, and so at times lying is good and kosher and holy because there's a greater end. And so anyway, this has to deal with lying to get someone in trouble. And a lot of times it's dealing with the courts. Like, say, for example, like false reports about rape, you know, because something didn't go your way. So a lot of women will actually just accuse somebody of rape and just blaspheme someone's name or character assassination, and just throw it out there. And how are you going to prove otherwise, you know? So that's basically what that's saying. And there's judgment calls, like whatever you sought to do, this is in the Jewish Bible, what you sought to do harm shall fall upon you. So if it was like eye for eye, tooth for tooth, and life for life. So it's like if you're accusing somebody of adultery, back in those days where adultery carried a death penalty, that is exactly what would befall you if you turned out to be a deliberate lying person giving false testimony. So the other one is you shall not covet. And this one is you shall not covet your neighbor's house, your neighbor's wife, your neighbor's ox or his ass, you know, donkey, and anything that belongs to him. Now, I like to joke around myself, and let me get some glasses on and see if this thing is still going, because I know it ends up at 9, so it looks like it's still going. So anyway, I'll have to pay attention to see if this one gets clocked off. But anyway, so do not covet anything that belongs to your neighbor. Now, there's some loopholes in all this. I like to joke around. A lot of people think I'm like bluffing or joking, but it's actually serious. You know, it says you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, but it doesn't say I can't covet your neighbor's daughter. And so actually that's a true statement, though I try and make it sound funny because that's the whole point of marriage, because you're coveting or lusting or desiring someone that might be suitable for you. So actually that is allowed, but the wife, she is bound to you by oath, or a vow of marriage vow, and so she's off limits. So another things is like a loophole would be like, okay, you might covet a neighbor's boat, say for example. It's okay to go up to them and ask them, hey, would you be willing to sell your boat to me? That type of coveting is kosher because you're being honest about it. But the thing is coveting usually leads to theft, adultery, and things like that. So it's now getting to the heart of things. Now, I want to say something about the New Testament. Jesus says something like, in Matthew 5, he says, you have heard of old, do not commit adultery, but I tell you, he who lusts after a woman, married woman, lustfully in his heart has committed adultery already. And it's like, okay. Some people think Jesus is saying something new. Actually, he wasn't. He was just giving you the commandment number 10, or saying number 10, thou shalt not covet. And he's telling you about what coveting leads to adultery, leads to theft, it leads to all sorts of evils. So put a check mark right here, or check, guard your heart so you don't be doing evil. So, or end up being evil. Because, like, say, for example, if you are carved, because it could also lead to murder at the end, maybe not coveting bluntly, but, like, say, if you're coveting, some money at a convenience store, and so you hold the guy up with a pistol, and so there you're stealing, one, and you're coveting, two. But if the shop owner pulls out a gun to ward you off and you shoot him, it could also lead to murder. So it leads to a whole bunch of stuff. So the Torah is telling you, keep your heart in check so you don't be sinning, and it starts right here, not just because your body doesn't randomly go out of the way to sin. You have to actually go out your way to go do it. So there's not, like, the Pauline thing is bogus to us, where you have this sinful nature. You have to make the conscious decision to do that. So it's you alone that does this stuff. And so that's a difference. So when you so-called sin, you do it right then and there. And so anyway, that's the 10 Commandments. And for us, it's the 9 sayings, because like I said earlier, the first statement is a statement, and then it's 9 commandments. So there's the difference between Christendom and Judaism. So anyway, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. And hopefully I'll do some more videos in the future. But I got this, my old grandma's painting right here. She had in her living room as I was growing up, since age 0 to time my grandpa died, and so she had to move out, and this was even in her nursing home for a while. This rock right here, this is backwards probably in the screen, but it's the name of God's ancient name, the original name El, what you see in archaeology. And this one I got like Jewish guy in the 10 Commandments here in Paleo Hebrew. So anyway, thanks for watching. I appreciate you. And you could go to my YouTube channel. I'm doing this mostly for Facebook, but you could go there. Just look up Maregaal Yaakov, and you'll find me. And I'm just starting up this channel to give people like some teachings, because a few people have asked me, why don't you